Live, and now it's live. Perfect. So, hello, beautiful people. We are live from Hollywood. No, from Manchester, and we have more people joining in. And Solveig, hello. Hi. How are you? Oh, you cannot hear us? Okay, you mute yourself. If you can, okay. We're gonna get started with the introduction again. Hello, everybody. So this is another Dark Hangout, and we will talk. For the first time, we have a guest actually. So far, it's been just discussing and chatting around one specific topic. And I had a chat with Barry a couple of weeks ago, and he started telling me things about royalties and about streaming and how they work. And I'm like, I didn't know about all these things. And we wondered, how many other musicians don't really know how things work. And I was fascinated. So we said, all right, next time we talk, we're not going to have just a discussion. We're going to have you as an expert to tell us a few things about music streaming, and then we will discuss that, which sounds fair, and everything will be recorded. We'll have it online, and people that couldn't attend, they will watch it. So, Barry, thanks for being here. Just introduce the people in the audience, everybody. Here we have Nim. Nim, not sure where you're from. I think you are from somewhere like West United States or
Midwest, Kansas City.
Kansas. Hello to Kansas. All right. Hi, Nim, and we have Barry, who is in California, if I'm not wrong. I think California. And we have Kachin, who is from Argentina, and he lives in Madrid in Spain. And we have Greg, who is from Orlando, I'm pretty sure. And we have Solveig, who is from, where are you from, Solveig? Please unmute yourself first.
Seattle.
Oh, Seattle, right, okay. So, Americans and 2 Europeans. That's great. So, how the format is going to go, Barry is going to talk about streaming, and then we'll open the discussion and we'll start talking about it. We'll see what's interesting around this topic. The whole thing's going to last around an hour, just so you know. And it's recorded, and we can watch the replay later. So, Barry, take it away. Get started.
Great. Thanks for getting up, especially the West Coast people. So basically, I got into a situation where I've got a company that we do licensing for film and TV, and we started looking at building a streaming service onto it. And as I did my research, I realized how little I knew about streaming and what was involved. And so this is just an opportunity. I've spent months of research and kind of finding out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's a great way for me, and we're going to try to keep this to a real quick glance of 20 minutes and then go into discussions. So I'll try to whip through everything as quick as I can. Sorry for the people that are late, because this thing starts off, with pretty much with a bang. So we'll be moving pretty quick, and we may have to say some of this stuff again. So the first thing I want to do for people who didn't know, like when you normally do a business talk, you go through and say, hey, what's the size of the total market, addressable market? And so the music business is hovering right around $15 billion a year, with about half of that being recorded music. The thing that's profound about this last year is, for the first time, physical product and digital product tied at $6.9 billion. So you're kind of going like, oh, well, we all been told that the shift was much quicker than it was. And there's different countries that are moving at a different pace. But that, at least, these are the numbers that kind of give you that idea. So that's the landscape with which we're doing. So we're going to go with the first part is just kind of the 101 of streaming. And this was the first part where, I didn't realize I didn't know some of this stuff. So there are basically 2 kinds of streaming. There is what they call online radio, which would be the Pandora format, which means you're kind of just like radio. You're turning on a radio station. You're really limited as to what you can do in terms to interact with that. And the other one is on demand. And so the big difference is with the online, with the online radio, they pay a different royalty rate completely, which is why they do it. They negotiate with Sound Exchange and what's called pure play rates, which is a legal thing, but basically really crappy royalties. You know, it's treated in a different way. And then on demand, obviously, they have to negotiate directly with the labels and stuff like that in terms of a Spotify. If you're going to go flipping around, so those are the two different things. The main players would be Pandora and Spotify. In terms of total number of things streamed, it's about 80 million with Pandora. But they are ad-based, so when they're doing just like a radio station, they make their money off the ads. Their split with the artist tends to be a 50-50 split, but as you can see, they're talking about a third of a penny per spin is basically where they're at. They give us half, and then you can see on the left-hand side, and some of you guys can look back at this chart later for further reference because it kind of really sums it up. The only thing interesting that Sound Exchange does is that they try to put a performer royalty, which for the United States, we don't have one. When you hear a song on the radio in the States, for those of you from Europe, there is no money paid to the artist. Basically, you can hear Aretha Franklin sing Respect on the radio, but she's not getting any. They pay, 3 cents writer, 3 cents publisher, F you Aretha, F you Atlantic. And we've been like that since the dawn of time when, there was a legal document that the United States didn't sign, and it's us, Iran, and North Korea are three of the big players that don't sign that, which is embarrassing as all get out. So as a result, that's our radio stuff is skewed. It's called neighboring rights. In Europe, you guys pay it, so the European countries are ticked off at us, so when our artists get played over there, they take their neighboring rights or artist royalties and put them in a black box and give them to European artists. So that's always a fun thought. And so Pandora's, they're saying we're making a third of a penny. Here's how we split it up, but at least they've got a little bit of a performer royalty. As you can see, they're talking a huge part of it goes to the record label, and then they've got a little tiny backup musician fee. Now, I don't know, how well they're doing at getting those people that, but at least it's an attempt to do it. And then the PROs for Pandora are terrible. They're paying songwriters about 4% of the revenue, which, as you'll see further on, is terrible. Spotify, on the other hand, says on our paid highest end things, we make about a penny. On our ad-based things, we're making a fifth of a penny. And they basically go, the PRO gets, and once again, songwriting is really, while it's great to be a songwriter on broadcast royalties of radio and TV, when you get into streaming, it's problematic. It's so low. So those are the two things. The online radio, which is really generally tends to be, they sell commercials and they pay the artist a piece of that. And then there's the on-demand where they go, hey, we're going to pay the labels and people a certain percentage of the revenue we bring in from our subscribers. This is a sort of a difference between a download and a stream, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a little bit nebulous on how they pay and this and that and the other, where it's pretty straightforward on a download. So this is I think one of the most exciting things. So anyone who didn't log in, once again, is a big miss. There's a company called a PSAM, which is a big hedge fund. They own about apparently 1% of Vivendi Universal. So they, and 1% of Universal, I don't know if that's $500 million worth of shares or whatever, but it's a lot. They're a big player. So they went in and said, hey, at a stockholders meeting, they said, we want you guys to take Universal Music, the largest label in the world, we want to blow it up big and sell it to a streaming service. And here's why. These projections you have here are streaming royalties. So they're saying less than $3 billion, which is where we're going to be at for 2015. They say in the next 5 years, they expect streaming royalties to go to $16.42 billion a year. So to harken back, the entire music business right now is only $15 billion. So we're talking about a swing up like we haven't seen since the heyday of music. And they expect the revenues like they expect the revenues to go up by 80%. And so that is some pretty good news for all of us that are, where revenues have gone down. So streaming is going to be the future, and it's going to be worth some money. They've gone through and forecasted everything like a hedge fund would in terms of physical. There'll be a decline in physical, but not at the level that the rise in the streaming will be. Here's their subscription forecast. Here's what it looks like in terms of recorded music value. So they're talking about it going to $26 billion for recorded music, which is currently about $7.5 billion. So we're talking more than 3 times the money that we're currently getting for our recorded music. So that is the good news, is that a pretty knowledgeable hedge fund says, we've been waiting for streaming to be worth something, and guess what? It's about to be. And I think a lot of it has to do with Netflix and stuff. People are starting to get used to subscription services. They're starting to get used to, I want to see Game of Thrones. I'm going to get HBO Go. And I think as more people log on to that, I think we're going to see a big upswing. So here's the bad news. Somebody leaked the Spotify deal at Pandora. And this is, for everyone who wonders why in the world they started Tidal and all the big rock stars were pissed off, it's because they got wind of this. So Spotify deal, first off, we'll say it's most favored nations, meaning that the other 2 labels most assuredly signed a deal very similar to this. In other words, on equal terms to this. And if they got a better deal, Sony got a better deal. So their deal was $42.5 million over 3 years in advances. Where advances are important is that the record labels don't necessarily owe that to the artist. Most people's record contracts say, hey, you are not entitled to any of Sony's advances, this, that, and the other. We'll pay you for the stuff you sell. So they got to pretty much take that $42 million and put it in their pocket. They also get $9 million in free Spotify advertising. They get $15 million in discounted ads that they can sell to Coca-Cola or somebody like that and keep the overage. In return, Sony said, our minimum payment will be $0.00225 per stream. So they basically said, you can have if you give us all this money, you can have access to the Sony catalog for a little over a fifth of a penny. And once the artists, the bigger artists who were bear brunt of that, like they're the guys getting streamed, they're the guys who are getting really raped on this deal. Once they found out that they pocketed all this money and then sold them down the river for a low streaming rate, that's why they had a hissy fit, justifiably, The other thing, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but is that now, particularly with Spotify, their number one powerful thing they have is playlists. They have 1.5 billion playlists on Spotify, and so they that's the power. That's the power of discovery. They don't have a search engine. They don't have any way to find new artists other than playlists. So it's sort of like the radio for streaming. So needless to say, Digimarc got caught bribing the best playlist, a playlist with the most viewers, to buy, to play major label product. And not surprisingly, all of the other people that make great playlists have been bought. Like these 3 companies, Filter, Topsify, and Digster, are all owned by major labels. So the major labels are doing the same thing they always do. Whether it's bribing radio or bribing playlists, they're going to see to it that their product gets in and ours doesn't. So that's them doing what they do. The weirder thing to me was the fact that all the major labels have taken the artist and leveraged that. They've decided, I joke, I call it the Don King rule. For those of you who don't know, he's a boxing promoter. And the joke about him is that he always walks out with the winner. So he'll back one fighter and then have a piece of the other fighter. So it doesn't matter who wins the fight. He walks out with the winner, raising his hand high. That's a little bit what they've done here. Forbes estimates that the 3 labels have amassed about $3 billion, or 20% of their value, in stock of all the other companies. They own 20% of Spotify. We all thought that when the Beats deal went down, that the major labels owned about 5%. Turns out when Apple went to buy Beats, they had a little bit of a struggle, so Universal said, hey, man, we'll sell you 13% right now for $404 million. And that stock, of course, once again, if they don't get any money from advances, they're not going to pay the artist any money from stock they got from pimping out the artist. So Vivendi got to put, Universal got to put $404 million in their profit margin and not have to pay it out to anybody. So the SoundCloud, Warner Brothers already done a deal with SoundCloud. They own 5% of SoundCloud now. The Universal deal apparently is having some problems. But long story short, the major labels don't care what streaming service wins. They're going to own a piece of all of them. And that's their deal. They own a piece of Shazam. Anything that they're licensing music to, they're now asking for a piece. So I don't know how, obviously they're sort of getting in bed with whoever they're doing, so they're not exactly fighting for higher artist royalties, I'll tell you that. I don't want to go through this. I'll just skip this, but these are all the good, the bad, the ugly of those things. I guess I'll go through it quick. Apple, when it turns to their discounts, they pay 70%, but they've got this discount, that thing. If you're an independent artist, you can drop to 58%. And then the big launch of Tidal, which it was, very obvious, there were no independent artists on their launch. They were an afterthought. They were looking at protecting their own interests, which, no one can blame them. But it'd be nice if some of the legacy artists kind of looked at the people coming up next and gave a little thought to them. Spotify, in 2014, they did almost €1 billion, but still managed to lose $138 million. But they still have money to hire 6 separate lobbying firms to lobby for lower artist royalties. And Pandora, I guess I'll go through this later, but I'll go do it now. Pandora was the one that shocked me because it was supposedly a bunch of musicians, the music genome and all this stuff. They're a publicly traded company because they went they did an IPO. And so their last quarter, they made $285.6 million in revenue in the second quarter, and yet still showed a net loss of $16.1 million. They were only given the artist and royalties of 45.6% of the revenue went towards that. So they had $171 million for a quarter and couldn't make a profit. Yeah, so something's going on, So the ugly part is here's the revenue as they're going. One of the things with Pandora is they've been fighting with BMI and ASCAP to pay lower royalties. But you look here, their revenues are going up, but so are their losses. And so you're kind of going like, you kind of try to figure out how in the world does that happen. In 2014, they had $732 million in U.S. advertising revenue, yet they're still losing money hand over fist. And these are just some facts about Pandora. The weirdest one is, because they only pay 4% to the writer and publisher, Pharrell's publisher revealed that for 1 million plays of Happy, they got $60. Aloe Black shared a $4,000 pay stub for his co-writing of Wake Me Up, which garnered 168 million plays. So these are not sustainable at all for songwriters. And the thing that bothers me is all the lobbying stuff, like Pandora supporting the Internet Radio Fairness Act, which sounds like, oh yeah, that sounds like something we should all be for. And it doesn't raise the radio stuff. It reduces the royalties paid by some of the things like satellite and things like that. So it would cause performers to receive 80% less. So I don't know how that's a Radio Fairness Act. The thing that bothered me is the bottom fact I've got there is that at the time they were losing $16.1 million, the director for Pandora sold a bunch of shares and put $1.2 million in his pocket. Crosslink Capital sold 250,000 shares, and this is stuff they have to disclose, and put about almost 4.7 million in their pocket. So while they're losing money, technically, they're making a lot of money somewhere. They're just not showing it on the books, which is good. But the other thing too is here's their new offices for Pandora on Park Avenue, and they had over 52,000 square feet and decide to double it. And so they're paying $6.5 million to lease an office building. So they're not exactly trying to make a profit, you know. And then the thing that really bothered me is, so they lost a lawsuit to BMI, but they were only paying BMI 1.75% of the profits, or of the money they made. And BMI said, hey, we want 2.5. So we're talking about 3/4 of a point. So they only paid BMI $16.1 million on their, you know, 3/4 billion, you know. And so the difference was only $7 million, but they took them to court. You know, they fought this real crazy deal, but if you look at the chart on the right, you know, the Pandora, this is just their executive stockholders. That's their revenue on the left, which is approaching $90 million for the stockholders. And BMI's royalties to the right, you know. I mean, it's just not even comparable. And in 2015, they disclosed that they are going to give out, Pandora will give out $122 million in stock or stock options to their owners. So, wow, you know, pretty amazing. I'm almost done, guys. And then Spotify, same kind of thing. They made close to $1 billion, but you can see as their revenues are growing, so are their losses. You know, 2014, you know, technically over a billion euros, but still managed to lose 165 million. And you're kind of going, how they claim to have 20 million subscribers paying worldwide, right? And not all of them are paying the $9.99. Some of them are students. They've got different rates, but it's clearly over $1 billion, and they're just not showing it. The other thing is Spotify said, hey, we're going to be given, as we grow, artists will make more and more and more. Well, the red line's the artist royalties per stream, and the blue line's the money that they're making. So you can see our money's going down, their money's going up, you know, particularly in the last year. So that's not exactly turning out to be true. And this was just more of things that Daniel Elk said and stuff like that. But Elk claims that 500,000 listens on Spotify would pay out between $3,000 and $4,000. That equates to 0.008 per play, not what they claim to do, a penny a spin, you know, that they'll be doing. And they claim that they're going to take 30% of whatever is the profitable money. And then this is the final slide, which is why we're all pissed off. This is in the United States. It's and it continues to go down. But basically, the number of people who put on their tax returns, "Hey, I do music for a living," has gone down by over 40%. So you know, we've all been struggling, and now here we've got the big thing, Savior, coming, and they're trying to make it so we don't necessarily share in it. So that's the part that drives me nuts a little bit. But that's the overall thing, and then I'm open for questions and everything like that. That was pretty quick way to go through all that, but there you go.
Good stuff. I mean, this is what shocked me, and that's why I thought, okay, we should share this with everybody, because these numbers and everything you're describing, it doesn't sound so promising for the future of artists and how they will make money through a sustainable system and through streaming and royalties.
If we can get our piece of it, we'll be fine. Because 25% of all the music sold is sold by independents.
Exactly.
But they're sure trying to rig the game so we don't. I'll tell you that.
The issue for me is that all these things are happening behind our backs, and we don't really know about these things. Solveig obviously knows everything because she's writing amazing comments and she's doing her homework. But I think the common, like an average musician, would not really spend time on all of these things, and at the end of the day, they will get what they're, the default thing, what's presented to them. So that's why let's open up the discussion. So by the way, because Solveig, you've mentioned amazing comments, and these things are not going to be shared on the final record. We'll copy all of these things so I can include them in the description. and everybody can read them later.
Oops.
Okay, so please unmute yourselves and start asking an hour. So just tell them what surprised you the most, what you think is worth it for the future.
What's defined as music for a living? I know a lot of artists make money off of YouTube. That's where their main income comes from. So is it perhaps possible that the definition of it has changed?
No, the definition hasn't changed. It's just what I find with a lot of musicians is that you know there's always a gray market to music. They're not going to declare everything on their taxes. You know,
Right.
Everybody didn't talk about every gig they play. I find it amazing that anybody's making a lot of money on YouTube, because as bad as we've talked about Spotify and Pandora, YouTube pays 10 times worse. They are one of the worst people in the world in terms of paying artists. It's like, hey, once your thing gets played 40,000 times, we'll go ahead and cut you in for a piece of the royalties, you know, the ad rights. It's like we actually are rolling out a product. We're going, screw you, pay me up front, you know. That's what we do for film and TV. But yeah, it has to do with the guys that are able to say, hey, I'm playing music for a living. I look around, I've got no other 1099s from anyone else.
Do you think that that's because there's difficulty finding out what's to be monetized and what isn't? Like, a lot of people don't want to buy music physically anymore. It's more like the product is the artist, as in their merchandise, and the brand that they build and the relationships that they have with their fan base is kind of what's monetized. So I think that's what I meant by, has the definition just been kind of turned into more nebulous than it was?
Yeah, the definition of making a living with music is still the same. Can I pay my bills? Can I feed my family? You know, that's making a living. Where we're going to make a living, you're right. It is anyone who doesn't know that downloads and physical music sales are going away, that we are, within 5 to 10 years, all revenue will be streaming. And what's scary to me is that includes radio royalties, that includes film and TV royalties, because those are broadcast royalties. What happens when we're no longer broadcasting? Every TV show is streamed. Every radio station is streamed. If we let them put really shitty royalties on streaming, we're all left.
If we let them, I like that.
Oh yeah, that is our decision.
So it boils down ultimately to whether or not we as artists choose to get educated and educate ourselves. Because if we know what's going on, then we can fight it. If we don't know what's going on, we're helpless.
Well,
I've got a question.
I'm helping with Tommy and anybody.
Okay, Greg, I'm going to mute you because my voice is coming through your laptop as well. So my question is, all right, we know about all of these things now. We get educated, as Greg says. Now, what's next? We're talking about the stock market. We're talking about companies that bet their whole structure on going public. We're talking about stockholders, about big corporations, about big labels that will do whatever they have to do anyway. So do you think that if we get educated, there's a way to fight back in a way? Or do you think we could as well focus on building our own business, and if streaming doesn't work in terms of royalties, then we'll do something else? What do you think? I'm open for discussion for this.
Yeah, I'll go with streaming is the future. So that's where we're going to have to fight the fight. I mean, obviously, they can't steal a live performance, thank God. You know, and merch is a lot more important than most people know, because the biggest problem with your fans is you don't have enough stuff to sell them. Benji Rogers at Pledge Music does a really good talk about this kind of stuff, and that is that once somebody's come to you once and they bought all your records, they come to watch your show a second time, you got nothing else to sell them. That's where merch and other things come in. Is you've got people who love you and would support you, but you have to have enough products and enough of a product line to keep selling them stuff. Whether it's private VIP meet and greets or all, you know, there's a lot of really innovative things that you can do. But in terms of us going against this, part of why I did all this research is I am going to launch a streaming service right after these guys. It's not even really the exact same product. We're basically we're beta testing a site called We Get Music, where we're going to have licensing for YouTube, direct licensing for YouTube, downloads, and streaming all in one. You know, with a search engine that obviously is designed for discovery, because no one needs to discover Beyonce. You know, we don't need to discover Taylor Swift. We need to discover the next one of those, or somebody like Snarky Puppy, or the really cool guys. So it'll be a different looking product, because if people are just happy with what the radio's serving them, they're not going to come to us. If they're looking for something different, or if they think the music on the radio is crappy, there's our opportunity.
I think Achin want to make a comment. Yeah, please unmute yourself. If you go up, there is a button.
He looks like he's unmuted, but remember, we couldn't hear him before, period. Are you sure that your microphone's on?
Achin?
Now I am mute.
Okay,
all
good.
right. Okay, guys. Just a comment. I think it was really great data you provided. What I can see, we used to have MTV. Now we have the playlist in Spotify. It's like the great gatekeepers just changed their disguises, and it's like there's streaming, yeah, but again, the playlists aren't about who is the new indie artist. They are owned by the majors. So I really believe that it all comes to the same: to create great content, to be creative, to get it out, and to create a community, and to leader that community, it all comes to the same thing. The streaming, yeah, the future, yeah, it's the streaming. I think is the format. It's a new format, yeah, of consumption, but it's not the answer for the independent musicians to live from their music. It's not the answer. It's just a format.
Well, I think it is the answer in some ways, because you look at radio. If you're a bluegrass guy or blues or Cajun music, they're not servicing you. So there's a real opportunity. If you get a streaming service that has incredible playlists, all bluegrass all the time, all Latin salsa all the time, there's a niche market that you can serve way better, because the big labels are now designed for the million-selling artists. You can't, if you've got a market that will never sell 1 million records, that is not the place for you to be. And there's an opportunity there. They don't give a crap about this kind of music. Well, we have plenty of musicians and fans that do. We serve them what they need. And then they're going, hey, for $10 a month, I can listen to all the blues I want. You know, I can, like, smooth jazz is one of those things where all the Quiet Storm and smooth jazz stations are gone, but there's a bunch of great players who like to do it and a lot of people who like to listen to it. You see every year, the summer they do everything from cruises to festivals. So that's a market that we could, like, a lot of these markets that they've dropped because they find them not profitable, we dominate those first. There's metalcore. My son's got a metalcore band. I mean, nobody's playing that on the radio, but they've got all the people they worship are independent artists, not on major labels. So if you support that, I think that's our foothold.
I read all these amazing comments of Solveig in the chat room, and unfortunately they're not going to be recorded. So Solveig, could you please unmute yourself and make a comment so everybody can hear your
voice? Come on, Seattle, let's hear what you got to say.
Hey, how you guys doing? Yeah, sorry, my light just went weird. Yeah, I love the presentation. I think it's really great. And I've read a lot of all of these things in other places. You just have put them all together. My only caveat with respect to the growth chart is what assumptions that hedge fund was making. And I hear you that, there's probably a bunch of analysts who've gone in and done some really detailed analysis, but I think that there's still some question about how consumption is changing as a result of streaming, and whether or not we're going to continue to see that kind of level of growth in terms of actual dollars that are spent in the industry, because there's a lot of question about whether the freemium to paying model actually yields the kind of revenue numbers that they're projecting. So that's my only real like question mark that I have in my head about that presentation. But everything else is like, yeah, completely spot on. I think the bright sides that I see.
To get to that though, you got to remember that you've got Spotify, the big champion on subscription. They only have 20 million people paying on planet Earth.
Yeah.
So as the public, when you look at like Netflix, almost 30 million. So there's a pretty good reason to believe that more people are going to be comfortable paying for a streaming service in the future.
I think that's the big question, though, is how many people are they really going to be able to convert? And we still have this whole piracy thing kind of lurking in the background, and not really.
You've noticed the major labels have now decided to be on board with suing the crap out of everybody, which is why they brought, again, SoundCloud was the biggest piracy site in the world. And Universal just, 1 inch from suing them out of existence. And they may yet. So we don't have to worry about that. Now that they've rigged the game, they're going to protect, they're going to end piracy, as much as they can, because now they've got and they're making everybody, they go, you want our product? You want us to not sue you? Here's the deal. When they finish the deal with Sound Exchange, there will be a subscription service on Sound Exchange. They are making them deal.
But they're never going to protect indie artists from piracy. So
Here's a newsflash that indie artists, we don't have a piracy problem.
Well, I think the question is going to be what really happens to consumption patterns, and does there end up being this bifurcated market where there's the top tier 1% of artists who are basically protected by the labels, and their intellectual property is protected because there's money in that for the labels, and there's a structure set up, and then there's the rest of the 90% of the artists who produce music that some people want and some people don't want, and basically is worth nothing because nobody's willing to pay for it.
Well, part of the artists have to demand that their music's worth something too. You still got people doing mixtapes and saying, I'm going to give it away. That's the new future. In any economist will tell you the only time something's worth nothing is when it costs almost nothing to produce.
Which is true.
Yeah, which is true. But think about music. You want to talk about how long it takes to learn to play a guitar, what it takes to have a recording studio, the hours you spend learning to sing. That's a lot of things. You can pretend like those aren't real costs, but they're real costs. So music is a lot of things, but it's not free to produce, and it's not going to be. So that's a false devaluation. That's in an economy sense, it is not a true. Music has not been devalued. We've been led to believe it is, but when it costs that much to produce, and granted, it's a lot cheaper than it used to be, it is a long way from free. And in terms of like the big problem for indie artists is not piracy; it's getting found. It's getting heard.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. And I'd be really
stolen and downloaded. You've got some good stuff going on.
I'd be really interested to know what you think of 8 tracks.
Not familiar with it.
So I like it. It's a good service.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are interested in actually discovering other music other than the top 40, and they use 8 tracks. And I forget who it was. Somebody just recently went to 8 tracks. Some music executive guy. So it's an interesting under the radar, music indie. It's kind of indie. It's kind of like got alternative music on there that you don't hear, and it is it is an interesting streaming service. If you guys are actually going to start one, I would definitely check out 8 tracks.
Well, I wrote it down, so I'm definitely going to check it out. There's a lot of things to me, and maybe you guys can help me. I have one crazy theory: is the music business has always been messed up business-wise. in terms of a fair distribution of the wealth to the people creating it. So if all of our money really is going to be in streaming, then I think it's time to reshuffle the royalty deck. So here's my theory. I think that we need to do the splits differently. It can't be that songwriters kill on broadcast royalties and get raped on streaming, and the labels get, that flips the other way. So my thought was to take 45% of the royalties on streaming and pay it to whoever owns the recording. To take 20% as opposed to the 4% they're currently paying and pay that to the writer and publisher. So there's a more robust royalty for writers. To create in the United States for the first time an artist performance royalty of 25%. Every time you hear it, if it's a penny, a quarter of a penny goes to the artist performing it. And then take 10% and say, let's make that a fund that we pay 3% to the producer. We put 1% for the engineers that worked on it and 6% for the musicians who played on the record. So now when you hear a stream, all of the ecosystem is supported. Everybody gets a little piece of the pie. And particularly when we're looking at running the numbers, because we don't have big stock debt, this, that, and the other, we honestly think we might be able to pay 5 times more than any of those other streaming services.
Yeah, but see, but here's the problem. How do you enter into a market where you've got like 5 huge players with deep pockets? Unless yeah, that's all like a really great idea, but to actually change the model in the industry is very hard. There's very high barriers to entry in this industry right now, Barry.
Well, you're talking to a guy who knows it. The thing that's different about my thing is I have a company. We represent labels and artists for film and TV placement. So I already work with 13,000 labels from 78 countries around the world. I have a searchable database that makes all those other people look like toys. Like a music supervisor can log in at midnight and go, I want a rock song mid-tempo with a male vocal that sounds like that band Oasis from the 1990s. It's kind of sad, but has birthday in the lyric. Now I need that in Portuguese, and it has to have acoustic guitar. So in terms of discovery, we're all set up for that. And I start with 250,000 tracks. You're right. If I were going, I've got a really cool idea and I've got some programmers, it would cost millions to make that happen. For me, we'll be beta testing it by the first quarter of next year.
But that's a licensing model that you're building off of, not you're talking about just basically streaming a publishing catalog.
No, I'm talking about the same thing those guys do. I'm talking about, like, basically what we do is we represent them for film and TV, but we've also been testing a market where we go into restaurants and bars. Like, that's another whole topic.
Other market.
Yeah, so that whole other market, we've got partners, and our revenue in that market has doubled every year for the last 3 years. And we're able, again, there are certain restaurants and bars that go, look, if you can't play Beyonce, I don't want you. But most restaurants, bars, and clothing stores are going, I just want really cool music. In fact, I find famous songs distracting.
Right, but I just don't want to confuse people about the markets that we're talking about. You're not talking about a consumer-facing, I have a little app that goes on my iPhone so I can stream. That's
exactly what I'm talking about. The beta test is going to be called We Get Music, and what it will be is a completely unique offering in that it's you get music. Well, what do you get it for? Well, what do you need it for? Oh, I want to put it in my YouTube video. Great, you can license it. I want to stream it in my restaurant or bar. Fantastic, we got you set up for that. I just want to stream it while I'm working out. Good. I want to download and find new artists. Fantastic. It will do all of those.
So basically, Barry, what Solvik says is that you're not building the next Spotify. It's not going to be the place where people can go stream music for the party.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Having a party here, I got some music in the background. I'm not going to use your service. I'm going to use Spotify, right? So you're not going to compete with Spotify for that.
Yeah. No, that's our point. Is yes, we're going to have a streaming service where you're going to pay a subscription thing and stream unlimited music. The difference is it'll be independent artists only.
Right. Okay.
Right,
that would be.
Yeah, I'm not trying to compete and go get Beyonce. There are 5 different places you can get Beyonce. Where can you find artists you don't know about? So you're right. We're not for the casual. As we launch, it will not be for the casual listener. The addressable market is the bottom 20% of the music listeners in the world. But that's still the revenues Like, we have it generating 36 million within 36 months. You know, so and what we found is with our artists, we project that they can make $100 at 300,000 users, which would be embarrassing and get you shut down anywhere else. We're generating about $100 a month in streaming royalties for the artist. And that, you know, when you think of Happy getting 1 million plays to make $60, making $100 for something considerably less is viable.
Right. I think this is a different discussion as well. You know, if you had a presentation and if we had a beta testing thing, I'm pretty sure that the patrons of the community would love to get access to it and make sure that, you know, we test it practically with our own audiences as well.
I would love to. When we get to that point, I'd love to have you guys check it out. You know, because right now we're breaking things every time we add something, so it's still a work in progress.
Perfect, and we're open to test it and give it a shot. You know? And why not, you know, make it popular and make it a great solution for artists.
He's right in that it's not a legit, like, you're not going in, they're not going to shake in their boots. They don't give a crap about the bottom 25%. We're still, to them, we're the 99-cent store, we're Walmart, you know, and we will always be, because they're the Clash of the Titans. What they don't realize is content is king and always will be. It'll be who can make good product that people want. At the end of the day, that's going to be ultimately, if we get a fair shot, the indies will be fine. It's them not letting us have a fair chance, because there's as much great music that no one knows about as there is that people do. In fact, probably 2 or 3 times that. And I'm not saying there's a ton, you know, every artist deserves to be discovered, because we all know that isn't true. But there are, for everybody we know about, there's got to be 10 people we should.
Right, so the big issue is curation, right? So how do you curate that library that you're streaming? Because there's like billions of artists out there who would love to make $100 a month or whatever.
So what we do, the first thing is you got to have a search engine. You got to be able to find it. You got to be able to parse it. Like, when you look at most of the streaming services have it between 25 and 30 million songs, and they call that the tyranny of choice. How do I find anything in 30 million songs with just playlists? You got to be kidding me. You know, so that's where we'll have a competitive advantage, is that I can literally go, show me every female heavy metal song that has acoustic guitar and is mid-tempo.
So we're talking about tagging music. Not just...
we are tagged within an inch of its life.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt now because we're about to hit 1 hour and we'd rather keep it short and sweet. So I'm going to ask the last question. The last person to answer this question is going to be you, Barry. So 1 minute or 2 minutes maximum per person. Let's answer the same question. So I'm going to mute everybody, and whoever is, like, we're going to start with Nim, and then go to Kachin, and then to Greg, and then to Solveig. So the question that I have for you is, do you think that music right now or in the future, streaming music right now or in the future, do you think it can be a part of your business model, that it can bring you significant revenue that you can use? Or do you think that it will be a place where we just have our music available for streaming and we don't really care about the revenue stream? Because we're building a business, and business means profit. So do you think it's a sustainable revenue stream? Let's start with him. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, mate.
There we go. Yes? Okay. So I personally, the way that I've been using streaming music is just using it as sort of advertising. I'm, just kind of watching the pennies trickle on in, and that's all they are, is, not even pennies. And so I'm just kind of using it as a tool to reach out to potential listeners, and, hopefully, these streaming services are reaching far and wide, and occasionally there's a person who's like, oh, hey, that really strikes a vibe with me. I'm going to go check this person out. Oh, this person's on Patreon. Oh, this person has a bunch of albums on Bandcamp. I want to personally support that person on a personal level. And, hopefully I get discovered by individuals, not record labels or anything else. that way. It's just a tool of outreach for me, and that's all I see it as for the time being.
That's great. You make a great point, actually, and Barry, keep notes, because having a call to action on the stream, so you know where the artist can be found and what they would like to do, after you've listened to their song, or maybe a mailing list. That would be great. And Spotify and other services don't have that. A call to action after you've streamed their music. What do you do next? All right. Thank you, Nim. Kachin, please unmute yourself and the same question. Hello, Kachin. We cannot hear you again. No Kachin today. There's somewhere on the top, just unmute yourself. Just to... All right, let's go to Greg. Oh, continue. Yes.
Yeah, I appeared. Okay. Okay, perfect. Just in time. Well, I was about to say that, yeah, I really believe streaming services can be part of my business model, but in this way, I think streaming content with some kind of subscriber or patronage structure, so to keep the streaming for some, I mean, Spotify and those streaming services are cool if you use an intelligent tagging, and it helps to be discovered by new potential fans. And so, but I truly believe that the way to incorporate the streaming in my business model is using a subscriber or patronage structure and to stream some, exclusive content for that community. I think that's the way. Not I mean, not waiting for the really small percentages of incomes that comes from the Spotify or
And if you're familiar with what Kachin does, he has a very well thought out business model, and it's going to be a case study later. And he's building something amazing. So I think it makes sense for you not to rely on stream, because your business model has different revenue streams, and this way you don't have to be desperate, for the pennies to start growing and to rely on whichever streaming service is on top right now. So I think it's good, and I believe in your system, and I'm going down your way. Thank you, Greg. Please unmute yourself, Greg. No. We got a problem. There should be an unmute button somewhere on top. Okay. Solveig, are you ready? Are you ready to unmute yourself? Yes.
I can talk. So my personal business model with my music is I don't try to make money with my music. I make money on other things. So streaming is like something I find really, really interesting, and I think that it's, for most artists that I work with, it's a promotional vehicle, and I think we're still trying to figure out how it can be a good discovery vehicle for them, which is really the goal of any kind of promotional marketing that you do, is discovery. And I think that we're still kind of working on this, and I am really interested in Barry's idea and service, because I think that the indie artist is really poorly served right now in the music industry. And then to me, as a marketer, because that's my job, that's what I have done for 25 years, it's all about anytime a market is poorly served, that is an opportunity as well as a problem. So totally the way to look at it from my point of view is how can you exploit that opportunity, and if you could bring a bunch of people together to create something that's going to benefit artists, and then you get momentum going, I think that could be a very, very successful thing, and ultimately could change the industry in a really good way. So it's very encouraging to me.
Great, and you mentioned the word, we need to be part of that. Otherwise there's no way that that royalties can be created if there's no people streaming and there's no demand, from the public or whichever audience group Barry has for his service.
Yeah.
Okay, and Greg, can you? Thank you, Sylvie. Greg, did you manage to actually work this out? No. Oh gosh. No. All right. I don't know what to say about that. I would like to hear what you have to say because you're very revolutionary in terms.
Are you sure? You just mouse up to the top and you see the little microphone on the left-hand side?
Yeah.
You hit that? It also can be at the bottom where you're speaking. I think you can click on it there. You see, you're going to mouse to the top on where it's got the Google thing. The first thing is microphone muted. It'll have a microphone with a line through it. If you just click on that, it'll unmute you.
Yeah, and I cannot unmute really. I cannot unmute Greg. He has to do it himself.
If he's muted himself, there's nothing. There's also a little pull down that that when you click on your face, that if you to the right-hand side, there's a pull down menu that would allow you to unmute.
And anyway, Greg says broken mic. Anyway, Barry, so you're the last person. You're the last person to answer the question. What do you think?
Okay, so what I think about music streaming is I think at long last it is exciting. They've been claiming it's going to be exciting. They've been claiming it's going to be a big difference. I think people discount the small payments individually, but when you think of radio, you're going, oh, they're paying 6 cents to the writer and publisher in the U.S. Generally on a radio station. Well, 100,000 people to 1 million people to even 50,000 people are hearing it, and we're only getting 6 cents. But as someone who's gotten those kind of royalties, I mean, it adds up. I mean, in my heyday, I was making 6 figures to not get out of bed. The bad part is less than 2.5% of all artists have ever even gotten a royalty check. So if there's a way for everybody to participate in that, it's going to be a game changer. And I'm excited. I'm concerned about the clash of titans above us, but I really don't think that they're going to give a crap for a while. So I'm excited about that. In terms of the engaging the fans, yes, we have an incredible way that we're engaging the fans. So we've got that built in, and couldn't agree more. But we think it's even superior to what you're talking, and it will yield incredible data on the fans, and so you'll know exactly where to market, where to tour, and you still get paid too. In terms of you want to go ahead and do his thing?
Yes, because we're running out of time, so I think everybody should have an equal share. So, Greg, what is your answer to that question?
I appreciate you guys, your patience with that. The mic on my laptop was broken. I was like, oh, well, I have a desktop too, so here I am. I really like what Nim and the other guy, sorry, I forgot your name, what they were talking about was thinking of more of these other media distribution channels as simply the attraction level of the marketing funnel, right? So the key is to thinking of it that way, and then enabling those media channels to then come to your hub where you control everything, your own website, your email list, and to think of social media and YouTube and streaming platforms as simply a commercial for your music, and then lead them back to what you own and you control. If you don't do that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because if you don't control it, you can't make decisions. You're left to the whims of Facebook or MySpace. So the only way to solve that is to create your own base. So that's what I think about streaming.
Yeah. Can I chime in? The problem with that is that's like, you know, honestly, man, I don't want to go to anybody's website. I don't have the time. Like the regular consumer, it's like, why do we go to the mall? There's all these shops on Main Street. Hey, I want it all in one place where I can go pick up some shoes. I want some hip hop. I want this. I just don't think that's going to be a fight that we can win. By the time you've got somebody who loves you enough to go to your website and really engage with you, they're already a fan. You've already won that war, you know. So like the biggest thing, I always hear artists go, "Oh, I need to be in iTunes so they can find me." Hey, I got a news flash. You're not even in the search engine on iTunes. They stop after major label product. If they don't spell your name right, you don't get discovered. iTunes does nothing to help you get found. If you're a major label artist or somebody who's got a history, yeah, you're in the search engine. Other than that, if you type in rock or hip hop, they don't even find you.
Yeah, this is. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Happen, you know?
This is what I mean is the problem's not getting your music out there. It's getting people to pay attention to you. So people aren't going to be as willing to pay for music today, regardless of where that's at. So obviously, if you're looking at the traditional marketing funnel, there are more people at the top of the funnel, and at the bottom, you totally make up for that in revenue, in lost revenue, because you're using people, you're attracting people into your fan base through these different distribution channels, and then building a relationship with them on your own terms. So the people at the top of the funnel, they're not going to spend a lot of money, but it totally compensates for it as you go down. Like there's a really interesting case study with Amanda Palmer. I think like 5,000 people contributed at her first tier for her what was it, Kickstarter campaign. $1. 5,000 people. That's $5,000. And at her last tier was $10,000 reward. One person bought that tier, and it totally blew 5,000 people as far as income and contribution financially. So it's not about numbers. It's just about building a system that people can facilitate that business model. So that's my thoughts on it.
No, you're right about that. That is the one thing is they say
Sorry, but
yeah.
I have to interrupt you here because we've hit the mark and we've exceeded actually the time. So we just like to make a review of what everybody said. So we have Nim and Kachin and Greg that stated in their opinion that streaming is a great way of getting discovered, of using it as a promotional tool, so that then you can bring everything back to your own channel, right? And having a business and building your own levels and different fandom, that's a great way of building your own revenue streams and making sure that the people that appreciate what you do actually pay for it.
I guess, did he peace out or did we lose him?
Kind of looks like we lost it.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, God. I was like, oh no. I don't know. I think Tommy's. I think we lost Tommy though.
Oh.
Yeah, he vanished.
Well, he can jump on like I did. Hey, what I was going to say is you're right about that. They say that 17%. It's the 80-20 rule. In normal business, 20% of your people give you 80% of your money. In the music business, it's worse. So you're right. If you find that Uber fan, I mean, that's where the money is. And getting a relationship, you're completely right about all that. So that was what I was going to say. Is like that is it. It's just the way that you find them. You know.
Yeah.
And once you engage them, like if you like Pledge Music, man. If you're doing a Kickstarter for music, Benji's got it nailed. You know. And his big deal, they had like a band in Canada that said, hey, $50 level, you know, have a beer with the band. So when they were touring, they would go and say, they bring a 6-pack, there were, 5 members of the band and 1 for you. And they sell more of those than anything else. So they were crazy. Like, what people want is this new generation, they want to be friends with the band.
Yeah.
You know? That's their big deal. So if they really love you, they'll support the shit out of you.
Hell yeah. And it's just about attracting and finding those people and funneling them down.
Yeah.
That's all my. I think that for your thing, if you enabled that and you facilitated that, artists would love you for it. You know.
So we're not recording anymore, right, Tommy?
Yes, actually, I don't know why, but Google kicked me out. Everything is recorded.
Right.
Now, whatever you were saying while I was gone was recorded. Now I'm back. Anyway, so what I was saying, I was talking to myself and I was explaining that. Yeah, just to make a recap, you know, we have Greg, Nim, and Kachin that are talking about using streams to get discovered, to have curated your content, to host your content, and to get people back to your own business, and making sure that you give enough products for the big fans to pay for what you do. While on the other side, we have Barry and Solveig that do believe that there's a great opportunity to create a sustainable revenue stream, and I think it's worth exploring, and I'm totally positive to do that. So that was a quick one. I do believe in both of you. I tend to lean on the side of the musician side, you know, where you can build your own business to have absolute control of what you do. And then if streaming happens to work on the meanwhile, that's great. That's another thing complementary to your own existing business model. So this is a quick recap of what we did. I would like you to share your links on the Google event page so I can put them in the description and share them on Patreon. Thank you for this great discussion. Thank you, Barry, for being our guest and sharing your knowledge and the presentation. That was very interesting. We really look forward to using your service. If you have any presentation or something, you know, like a short video, a demonstration, a beta testing we can use, feel free to send it over via email. I'm going to forward it to the Patreon community.
We're still developing it right now. We're keeping it a little bit quiet. But once
whenever you're ready and you want us to try something. Thank you, Nim, for being around. Thank you, Kachin. Thank you, Greg. Greg and Kachin, they're almost every month, and that's great. These are the super fans, Greg and Kachin. And Solveig, she disappeared. I don't know what happened while I was gone.
What's the matter? Can't get any people from your continent? Got to come over and poach ours? What up? You got no supporters in the UK?
Actually, I do. I do have a lot with them, but I'm talking with them every month for Darker Music Talks. So I think they're pretty sick of me, you know, like seeing me all the time. Anyway, so thank you guys. You can unmute yourselves and we can all say hi, make some noise, and then I'm going to stop recording so the video can be uploaded.
Tommy, I have a question.
Right. Right. So yeah, that was a bad. Bye. So everybody just make some noise like that. Yes, that's it. Right, I'm gonna stop recording.